I'm 84 years old, and I still think about Raymond. Not every day, but often enough that I know it means something. Often enough that when I sit in this chair in the evening, when the house is quiet and there is nothing left to distract me, his face comes back. The way he laughed, the way he'd lean forward when he was making a point, like the words mattered to him, like you mattered to him. I haven't spoken to Raymond in 31 years. I don't have a good reason for that. That's the part I keep turning over. If I had a reason, a real one, a fight, a betrayal, something that broke between us, I think I could make peace with it. But I don't. What I have instead is nothing. A slow fading, a drifting apart that I watched happen and did not stop. That is what I want to talk about today. Not the friendships that ended in fire, the ones that ended in silence. Raymond and I met in 1968. We were both working at the same printing company, both in our late 20s, both newly married, both convinced that our real lives were still just ahead of us. We ate lunch together almost every day for 3 years. We coached the same Little League team one summer. His daughter and my son were in the same class for 2 years running. I knew his parents. He knew mine. When I think about those years now, what strikes me is how easy it was. The friendship required nothing difficult from either of us. We just showed up over and over, and that was enough. There was no maintaining it. It simply existed, the way breathing exists. You don't think about it until it stops. In the mid-70s, I changed jobs. He stayed at the print shop. That was the first small gap, not significant on its own. But I was busy with the new position. Longer hours, a commute that ate up the evenings. We still saw each other. Less often, but we still saw each other. Then I moved my family across town, closer to my wife's mother who was getting older and needed help. A practical decision. A good decision. I still believe that. But Raymond was now 20 minutes further away, and in those years 20 minutes felt like a real distance. We called on birthdays. We ran into each other at the hardware store sometimes. Once, maybe 1981, we had dinner together, and it was exactly like before. Exactly. We sat at that table for 3 hours, and I drove home thinking we had to do this more often. We never did. I don't know whose fault that is. I've asked myself that question more times than I can count, and I don't arrive anywhere useful. I think we were both waiting. I think we each assumed the other one had a full life, and didn't want to impose. I think we both told ourselves the friendship was fine. It was just dormant. It would come back when things settled down. Things don't settle down. I know that now. There is no quieter season coming. There is only the season you're in. By the late 80s, we had stopped calling on birthdays. I'm not sure when that stopped. I couldn't tell you the last birthday I called him on. It just ceased to happen. The way habits cease when you're not paying attention. And by then I had a very full life. Or what felt like a full life. Work, the kids, their school plays and their sports and their problems. My wife and I had taken up gardening. There were neighbors, colleagues, people at the church. I wasn't lonely. That's the honest truth. I didn't feel the absence of Raymond because I had filled the space without meaning to. Not with better friendships, just with noise and activity and the ordinary business of living. I think that's how most friendships end. Not because someone decides to end them, because no one decides to continue them. I saw him once more in 1993, a mutual friend's retirement party. He was standing near the back of the room and we made eye contact across a crowd of people, and he smiled. That same smile. And I made my way over and we shook hands and we said the things people say. You look great. How are the kids? We should get together. I meant it when I said it. I think he meant it too. Neither of us made the call. He died in 2002. Heart attack. I found out through someone else. Weeks after the funeral. I sat with that for a long time. I still sit with it. He was 63 years old. He died and I was not there, and I had not spoken to him in nearly a decade, and I had no real explanation for why. There is a particular kind of grief that comes from loss, that had no necessity. When someone dies who you loved, and who was there until the end, that grief is clean in its way. It has a shape you can hold. You mourn what you had, but when someone dies who you lost long before they died, the grief is harder to locate. You mourn what you had, yes. But underneath that, quieter and more persistent, you mourn what you gave away, what you let go without understanding what you were holding. I have other friendships. I've let go the same way. I want to be honest about that. Raymond is the one I think about most, because he was the closest, the most constant, the one where the before and the after are most clear to me. But there were others. Men I worked alongside for years and then never contacted again after I retired. A neighbor I had real conversations with, the kind you remember. And then one day he moved away and I never found his new address. And that was that. I'm not a cold person. I don't think I was ever a cold person. I was just someone who assumed that good things persisted on their own, that connections once made, stayed made, that I could return to something later and find it where I left it. You can't. People are not objects on a shelf. I'm 84 now and my world is very small. I don't say that for sympathy. It's just the reality of this age. My wife passed 4 years ago. My son lives in another state. We talk on Sundays. A few people from the church stop by when they can. The circle gets smaller, and there's no way to reverse that at this stage. What I notice now, which I could not have understood at 50 or even at 60, is that loneliness in old age is not about having no one. Sometimes it's about having no one who knew the earlier version of you. No one who remembers who you were before. The people who held that history, who could say yes. I remember when you were young and uncertain and full of your life ahead of you. Most of them are gone. Some of them didn't have to be. If you are listening to this and you are younger than I am, I want to say something plainly. The friends you have now, the ones who knew you before you became whatever you've become, the ones where the friendship is comfortable enough that it could easily go quiet for a few months and you wouldn't panic. Those are the ones to watch. Not because they're fragile, because you might be. You might be the one who assumes it will continue without effort. You might be the one who gets busy, who moves, who lets the calls get less frequent, who tells yourself there will be more time to reconnect when things calm down. I'm not telling you to do anything. I don't know your life. I'm just telling you what mine looked like, from the outside. Looking back, it looked like a man who had something rare, who did not understand what it was, who set it down one day, intending to pick it up again. I never picked it up again. I think about what I would say to Raymond if I had 1 hour with him. An hour sounds like enough time. It isn't. But in this kind of thinking, you never allow yourself the luxury of more than an hour. I think I would just tell him that I remembered, that the lunches mattered, that the summer we coached that little league team, when neither of us knew what we were doing, and the kids lost every game. That was one of the happiest summers of my adult life, and I should have told him that before he died. I think I would tell him I was sorry for the drift. Not that I had a clear explanation for it, just that I was sorry I let it happen without a fight. I don't know if that would mean anything to him. Maybe he didn't think about it the way I do. Maybe he had made his peace with it, long before he died. I hope so. I genuinely hope he was not sitting somewhere in his last years, feeling the same kind of unresolved quiet that I carry now. But I'll never know. That's the thing about what can't be fixed. It stays open. It doesn't close into an answer. I have some time left. I don't know how much. At 84, you learn not to plan too far ahead. But you also learn not to assume today is the last day. You live in a kind of deliberate present. What I try to do now with the people still in my life is be less quiet about what they mean to me. It doesn't come naturally. My generation wasn't taught to say things like that directly. But I'm trying. When my son calls on Sundays, I try to make sure by the end of the call he knows I was glad he called. When the woman from the church brings food over, I try to really thank her. Not just the polite kind of thanks, but the kind that communicates something real. It isn't much, but it's what I have left to give. If this reached you in some way, I'd be glad to know. Not because I need it, but because it's a strange thing. Speaking into something you can't see. Not knowing if anyone is really on the other side. If you're there, and this meant something, you can say so. That's enough.